watch this at night. Hey curious cats, my name is Sahara. Welcome to That True Crime channel. Let's get into it. This is part 2 of the Susan Cox Powell case. I will put a link in the description box to part 1 because you sort of have to watch it before you watch this one. So we ended part 1 with Josh and Susan moving in with Josh's older sister Jennifer in Utah. The couple was looking for a house of their own, and it was around the same time that Josh started losing faith. They finally find a house in West Valley right after the couple finds a temp job. They needed to get a loan because they could not afford to buy a house, and shortly after they got the loan and moved into the house, Josh lost his job, and this is something that Josh was used to doing. He could never really keep a job for too long. Even before he started working, when he was studying, he just kept changing his mind on what he wanted to do in life. After he loses the temp job, he becomes a realtor, but that doesn't really take off. He doesn't find any clients. Susan is the one supporting the family for a while. As much as Josh is not having the best time, Susan easily settles in this new life with her new job. She makes friends at work, at church, and with neighbors as well. Stephen, her father-in-law, who remember, loves her a lot. He's still pretty much present in the couple's life, not physically present, but he calls a lot, and he can stay hours on the phone with Josh. Susan is still mad at him from the revelation that he made. You remember from part 1 when he told her that he was actually in love with her, but at least now they live in different states, so she barely sees him. Susan's temp job becomes a full-time position, which is such a relief for her because she is pregnant. She is, however, worried about Josh being a father, not only because he cannot keep a job, but also because he doesn't seem to be ready to be a dad. Their first son, Charlie, was born January 19, 2005, and Susan is ecstatic. She wanted to have her family. She wanted to have kids so badly. She is on cloud 9. When she delivers the baby, guess who's late at the hospital? Her husband Josh. I mean, that year he also forgot their wedding anniversary. It's like he doesn't care anymore. He's not invested. Not only that, but he also doesn't show Susan affection anymore. He doesn't even support the family financially. He doesn't even contribute. Susan writes in her journal that the couple hasn't been intimate for about a year. It's mostly because Josh does not want to have another kid, but it's not the only reason. In his journal, Josh talks about how he is just not an affectionate person, and he never really was. He loves Susan, but he just doesn't want to cuddle for too long. He doesn't even want to kiss her anymore. Catherine, his ex, she said about Josh that he was like that with her. Like in the beginning, he was affectionate, but then over time, he became less and less affectionate, especially after they moved in together. And now he's doing the same thing to Susan. Susan will seek help from the church because she really wants this marriage to work. She writes about all the sacrifices that she's willing to make, the money that she's willing to save, all the praying she's willing to do. The church will advise them counseling, couples therapy, but Josh isn't going to church anymore. Just like his father, he lost faith. He didn't do it exactly like his dad, because Stephen, remember, at some point he just officially decided to leave the congregation. But Josh, he lost interest, but he didn't make it official that he wasn't a Mormon anymore. Susan is pregnant again. She's expecting another boy. Braden was born on January the 2nd, 2007, about 2 years after his brother Charlie. And Josh, again, he is not invested. He doesn't take care of his kids much, probably even less than before. He doesn't want to help with changing diapers and doing chores and, helping around the house. He just doesn't want to help. The worst thing is, Susan isn't working at the moment. She just had another baby. So financially, the couple is struggling even more than before. In April 2007, Josh filed for bankruptcy. He had $30,000 in credit card debt, $59,000 in student loans, and he even included $3,000 that he owed to Susan's father. Right before he filed for bankruptcy, he made sure he maxed out all of their credit cards. He just bought a lot of toys, a lot of tools that he would never use because he's lazy. And he actually said that if this happens again, if they are again in financial trouble, they can just file for bankruptcy. Again, around that time, Susan writes that she feels alone and frustrated. She does everything. She takes care of everything. She feels like a single mother. Josh does not want to provide. He's not doing anything to help her. But Susan still tries to stay positive. She clings to her faith in God, and she tries to see this blessing that is her family. She tries to focus on the very small things her husband does occasionally. Susan starts to work at Wells Fargo Bank because someone actually has to put food on the table, and Josh will easily spend her money on himself, but when Susan spends her own money, he gives her crap about it. He tells her that the yogurts that she bought were cheaper in that other store. They were 50 cents cheaper. For Susan's birthday, I think it was that year, 2007, Josh offered her DVDs about faith, about religion. And before you start thinking that, it's cute, it's adorable, he knows his wife, he knows she's a devout Mormon, and he offered her a gift that he knew would make her happy. He actually got those DVDs at their local church, and they were probably, 50 cents or $1 each. That's how much he was willing to spend on her birthday. I'm not saying gifts should be expensive, that's not at all what I'm saying, but he was just cheap and he was not willing to spend any money on her. He was not making any efforts. That's basically what I'm trying to say. He probably used her money to buy those gifts anyway. So the year 2008 is gonna be the worst year for the couple. They just fight over everything. Susan writes in her diaries that she cannot practice her own religion under her roof. Josh has lost faith, and that's absolutely fine, but he has no right. I mean, she feels that he has no right to prevent her from practicing her faith. He even gets angry with her when she says prayer at the dinner table. She keeps begging Josh to help her out with chores and with the kids. Obviously, the couple fights over money all the time. Josh had insisted for Susan to cash her checks on a joint account, which she accepted at first, and it was like that from the beginning of their relationship. But recently, she opened a personal account. It's pretty much what he did to Catherine, his ex, remember? Josh found a job as a web developer, part-time job, better than nothing, I guess. He even created his own company, but just like his realtor thing, it didn't really take off. Josh, again, he's like his father. He abuses his wife pretty much the same way Stephen had abused his wife Terry, ex-wife Terry. Josh would call Susan names when they would fight. He would snap at her all the time. He would try to control her and her income. Sometimes they even fought in front of their friends. One time they had a very, very bad argument and Susan slapped him. He did not return the slap. He did not hit her, but he threatened her and he said, "Don't ever do this again." The way he said it, Susan felt like, okay, he never hit me. He was never physically violent with me, but I feel like maybe he could in the future. Susan never truly realized that she was in an abusive relationship until her parents told her. One day they spoke to her and they tried to explain to her that she was in an abusive relationship, and at first she was denying it. She was so deep in it, she wasn't seeing it. They begged her for her safety. They told her that they were actually scared for her, and they begged her to get a second cell phone, which she did. The couple's problems keep getting worse and worse, especially the year 2008, and it gets to the point where Susan starts to think about getting a divorce. She's seriously considering disappearing with the boys, but she knows that Josh would do anything to find her, to find them. She even thinks that he'd be capable of doing the same thing, take the boys and just disappear with them. Stephen was kidnapped when he was a kid, so she fears maybe history is gonna repeat itself with her kids. She even thinks Josh is capable of killing her, she told friends. Josh takes out life insurance on Susan, $1 million. He takes one on himself and the boys as well. And about that, Susan writes in her journal that she's worth $1 million if she's dead, which is a pretty scary thought. Susan reaches out to an attorney, and on his advice, she's going to do two things. The first one is that she's going to keep a paper trail of how her marriage is failing. She writes that she's scared that something could happen to her. She writes, "Check my blogs on MySpace, talk to my friend Kirsty, talk to my coworkers, my family members, my sister-in-law Jennifer, who seems to be on her side. Take care of my boys. I love you, Charlie and Braden. I would never leave you." She puts this note on an envelope and she writes a small note over the envelope that says, "For my family and friends except Josh Powell, I don't trust him. He is not allowed to possess this." That speaks volume, doesn't it? The other thing that she does on her attorney's advice is that she will document everything the couple possesses.
This is Josh's computer, and there's some type of backup device and speakers. And, sorry if I make you sick, here's the kind of pimping out stuff he's done to his computer. He built it himself. I think there's like 5 hard drives, something about doing raids. There's those for all the computer geeks. And this is some type of backup device. It says WD on this side. I don't know, it like shares the information somehow. My book world edition. I think that's the stuff I was looking at earlier that saves information. Here's a laptop. This old camera now, HP 4.1 megapixels. Nikon camera. You'll see that later. Here it is. Nikon digital. And obviously what I'm shooting this off says JVC hard disk camcorder micro S HD 30 GB 7 to 37 hours 4 recording modes hybrid Everio conical Minolta lens, which reminds me we have a Minolta camera. I don't know where Josh put it.
When I saw the tapes and when I read about that, I thought it was almost funny that he would give her crap about yogurts that were 50 cents cheaper in another store when he has so much junk that he barely uses. About a week after Susan made this recording, she got a safe deposit at the bank she works at Wells Fargo. She kept some documents in there that could potentially help her in case of a divorce. She did write how it was not that easy to leave. She also felt like she had a religious duty towards Josh. She feels like if she stays, maybe his faith will come back and maybe things will get better. One day, Susan told a friend that her and Josh were at home watching true crime, and Josh told her, "I could get away with murder. All I would have to do is get rid of the body, make sure that the police would never find it." I mean, you understand now why she fears for her life. When the couple gets to their 8-year anniversary, things seem to be getting better. They're intimate again. Susan is even hoping to get pregnant with a girl this time. Josh agrees to go to church once a month. Weirdly enough, he asks her to not go once a month, so she goes every Sunday. And he says to her, like, I'll go once a month, but you go 3 times a month instead of 4 times a month, which is insane, but whatever. At least he's making some efforts now, but it's not perfect. Again, as I said, he still is annoyed when she prays at the dinner table. And again, it still feels like she cannot be a devout Mormon as much as she would like to be under her roof. He basically became his father. Susan told a friend that one day she surprised Josh on the phone with his dad, with Steven, and the boys were, I think, on his lap or on the couch with him, and he was talking to them, telling them how Mormonism is bad and their mom is not a good person. Stephen was doing the same thing with his kids when they were younger. So the one thing that was different is that Stephen made it a secret that he left the church at the beginning, at least, but basically Josh became like his dad. Susan starts to become more and more assertive. She's making decisions now. Susan decides that once a week she's gonna have girls' night, and Josh can give her at least one night a week where she can just go out with friends and just have fun. She even starts to send money to her dad, the money that they owe him, because when they filed for bankruptcy, it didn't clear out all their debts. So she just insisted on having this debt repaid to her dad. She even forces Josh to have dates with her. I mean, she really tried. Anyway, so she forces Josh to have dates, and he's like, yeah, okay, well, we don't have to spend that much money, like a $5 pizza should do it. He also tells her that when he does chores at home, it counts as a date. Josh ends up agreeing to go to counseling, which is great, on the condition that it's free, on the condition that they don't have to actually pay for it. That's how much he's invested in their marriage. They go through the church because church offers free relationship advice and help. Okay, at least he's trying as well. He's making some efforts. He's given in to Susan trying so hard. So on December 7, 2009, it's a Monday, Charlie and Braden did not show up at daycare. Debbie, the daycare provider, she's thinking that it's unlike Susan, she's never late, or at least she would have called. So Debbie calls Susan's workplace and they tell her that she didn't come this morning. She also calls Josh's workplace and they tell her the same thing. Josh did not show up this morning. And because the week before the couple had spoken to Debbie's husband about their heating system, she thought carbon monoxide accident maybe. So she drives to the couple's home. The first thing she notices when she gets there is that there are no tracks on the snow, on the fresh snow that has fallen last night. No car tracks, no footprints either. She knocks on the door, she knocks many times and nobody answers. The emergency contact for the Powell family is Jennifer Graves, Josh's sister, so she calls her and she tells her what's going on. Jennifer calls 911 and she's heading to Josh's house. The police arrive around 10 a.m. They knock many times, again, just like Debbie had done. They also get no response, so they ask Jennifer permission to break the window. Jennifer tells them, yeah, of course, break it and let's go inside and check if they're okay. When they get inside the house, everything seems pretty normal. The house is fairly clean. They notice that there are a few fans in the living room, it doesn't seem right. There's, I think, 3 or 4 of them. They also notice that the couch was recently cleaned and they wonder why. When they get to the couple's bedroom, they notice that Susan's purse is on her nightstand. She didn't take it with her. And right then, Jennifer thinks that maybe Josh has done something to Susan. Jennifer calls Chuck Cox, Susan's father, and she asks him if he's heard of her, if maybe she is with him. Chuck is not panicked. He's pretty calm and he's not worried. He tells her that maybe her phone is off, maybe she took the kids to the doctor. He doesn't immediately think that the worst has happened. Jennifer is really panicked, but Chuck isn't. The police will then call Susan's workplace and Josh's workplace. They just double check. Debbie told her that she called before them, but of course they have to double check, and they get the confirmation that they are not at work. In the afternoon, the police decide to call a detective. The first theory of the detective is that maybe they had an accident because it snowed. There was a sort of little storm in the area the night before, so he thinks that maybe they are stuck in the snow or maybe they had an accident. He also does a quick background check on the couple. He finds out that they don't have a criminal record. They also never call the police for domestic violence, for example, or stuff like that. In the house, the detective notices that it doesn't look like it was a burglary or there was a fight. Nothing seems abnormal. He also tries to call the couple, of course, and he gets to their voicemail. Then he starts asking questions to family members and neighbors, and he finds out that the couple had issues. That's the least you can say. Stephen will confirm that the last time he was on the phone with his son, it was the day before in the morning, Sunday morning. Josh had called him to ask for a pancake recipe. He never cooks, but he wants to know how to make pancakes. The detective discovers that the last person who has seen the couple alive is their neighbor. Sometimes she babysits the boys, so she tells the detective that the day before she went to their house. She confirms that Josh made pancakes, which she thought was weird. He even washed the dishes and cleaned the kitchen, which was very unlike him. Susan apparently told her that she had been feeling sick for the past few weeks. She was having headaches and nausea, also stomach pain. She actually thought she was pregnant. Even though the test came back negative, she still thought that she was pregnant and she just lost the baby. That's when I started thinking maybe she was poisoned. But we'll get back to that. The neighbor says that around 5 p.m. is when she left and Susan was on the couch. She was lying down. That day that the couple vanished, her son, the neighbor's son, he called Josh and he left a voice message. I think a lot of people had called him and left voice messages, but this one voice message is important and you will soon understand why. Around 5 p.m. on Monday, Jennifer receives a phone call from Josh and everybody's like, where the hell have you been? He says he's at work and his sister's like, no, stop lying, just tell me where you are. And he's like, okay, well, I went camping with the boys last night. We got caught in the storm, but now we're on our way back. She asks about Susan and he lies again. He says she's at work and she's like, dude, I know you're lying. She's not at work. Just tell me where she is. He says, I don't know where she is. She's not with us. From the moment she saw the purse in their bedroom, Jennifer knows that something happened to Susan. She's trying to stay calm. She doesn't want to scare him off. She doesn't know what he's capable of doing, so she just tries to calm down and she tells him to just come back home. We don't know where Susan is. Everybody's looking for her, so you have to come back. The detective also speaks to him on the phone and he explains the situation and he also tells him, you have to come back. And then Josh says, well, I have to feed the kids. Okay, yeah, don't let them starve. That's obviously. Everybody's at your house. Everybody's looking for your wife and you don't seem that worried and you're like, I have to feed my kids. It's like he's looking for an excuse to not come home, like right now. He finally gets home around 6:40 p.m. Like that's how long it took him to get back home. That's how much he doesn't care. When Josh pulls over, the detective talks to him through the window of his car and he asks him why his phone was off for most of the day. And Josh said, I was trying to save my battery. And the detective, well, he's a detective. He immediately saw that there was a charger inside the car, so Josh is not arrested, but he's going to be interviewed by police. They ask him to tell them what happened in the last 24 hours. He confirms that the neighbor was at their house on Sunday. He pretty much confirms everything that has been said to the detective so far. Then he adds that Susan asked him to clean the couch. Once he had done it, he took the fans, all the fans they had in the home, and he used them to dry the couch quicker. Then he explains that around midnight, he took the boys and they went camping. And Susan apparently was okay with it. Even though it's a Sunday evening, the next day they have to go to daycare, the next day he has to go to work. And it's December, it's freezing cold, and there was a storm that night. And Susan was okay with it. Right. The Sunday that was really Sunday, he thought it was Saturday, so he thought the next day was Sunday and not Monday, and that's why he left. Okay. Last week it did happen to me that it was Saturday and I thought it was Sunday. I thought it was one day later. So that does happen to one person, but I don't believe that it can happen to two people at the same time on the same day. Josh explains that on Monday morning that he thought was Sunday, when he finally realized that it was Monday, he thought, well, there's no point that I call work right now because obviously they know that I didn't show up, so there's no need to call them. Makes perfect sense. On his way back, supposedly he went to the car wash, which, if you ask me, is very suspicious, but whatever. When the detective asks him which car wash, he says, I don't remember. So he's interrogated that same day that he came back from this camping trip. And he went to that car wash a few hours before he was interviewed. And he doesn't remember to which car wash he went a few hours ago. Where's Susan? She went to work, he says. How did she get to work when you're the one who has the car? Well, I don't know, I'm not sure, he says. The detective then asks if the couple had issues, and Josh will be actually honest. He says, yes, we did. We were seeing a counselor. He asks him what kind of issues they were having. He says, well, she sort of has a temper. Then he hesitates and he goes, sometimes I can be lazy. Sometimes. At the beginning of the interview, he seems to be emotional, like he seems to at least try and show that he cares. But then he just doesn't cooperate. He doesn't help the police. Your wife just went missing. Like, why would you not want to cooperate? He doesn't ask them what they're doing to find her. He doesn't give them anything to help. Like, he doesn't say, maybe she went to that person's house. Maybe she went to see that friend. He doesn't give the names of any of her friends. He doesn't give them phone numbers. He just doesn't give anything. And to a lot of questions, he says, I don't know. I'm not sure. I can't remember. At that point, the police don't have much to request a warrant to either arrest him or search his house or his car. So they ask him nicely, can we search your car? And he says, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. I mean, why would you hesitate? Inside the car, they find camping gear and other tools, just, various objects, a blanket, two small blankets that were from the kids' bedrooms. It's almost funny how there is camping gear, but there is no tent. They find in the car Susan's phone. They ask him, how come you have Susan's phone? He stutters, he hesitates. I mean, when you lie, when you have to come up with a lie, that's what you do. And then he says that he borrowed it because he needed some phone numbers that were inside the phone, like she couldn't send him a text message. So supposedly he borrowed the phone and he put it in his pocket, that's what he said, and then he just forgot to take it out. But the thing is, the phone was not found in his pocket, it was found in the, I don't know how you call it in English, when you're when you're in the driver's seat. Yeah, my English is not that great, I'm sorry. In that thingy where you can put stuff in, you know what I'm talking about. None of it is making sense. In Susan's phone, they find a voice message that Josh sent her. He knew he had the phone and he left a voice message. It just sounds prepared. And just remember that voice message he sent her because it's gonna come back very soon. The police then go to the campsite where Josh and his sons went to the night Susan went missing. There was an abandoned mine nearby that they searched. They were actually looking for a body, but the search was unsuccessful. The following day, Josh was asked to come back for another interview, but this time they asked him to come without the boys, because that first time he was interviewed by police, he had the boys with him. It was the perfect distraction for Josh to not answer their questions. Sometimes if they would ask him a question that he did not want to answer to, he would just pretend to be, taking care of them or talking to them or whatever. So they're like, come back tomorrow, but don't bring them with you. The next day, guess who shows up late at his 9 a.m. appointment? with the police. He was busy cleaning the car, he was throwing garbage bags as well, he was doing laundry, he was cleaning inside the house as well. You probably wonder why he was not arrested. I mean, I thought after he missed that appointment at 9 a.m., it would just show how guilty he was. Susan's family believed that there was more than enough evidence, even if it was circumstantial, for Josh to be arrested. But the lead detective on this case explained that the district attorney told police that with the evidence they had, especially considering the fact that they didn't have a body, they would have to wait 12 months to get a warrant to arrest Josh, unless they find the body, of course. When I found out about the makeshift testament that she wrote and put in the safe deposit at the bank, honestly, I thought it was going to be enough. She wrote, "If I die, it may not be an accident." I mean, what more do you need, District Attorney? Let's get back to the second interview. Josh finally gets there, and he was very late. I think he eventually got there because his sister called him, and she was like, "What are you doing?" "I'm doing laundry." "Yeah, okay, this is not the time to do laundry. Go see the police right now." So I think that's why he went. So he gets there, and he's late, and they take picture of his hands, and he has what appears to be small cuts. Again, he's very elusive. What happened? I don't know. I don't remember. Same as the day before. Josh isn't doing anything to find Susan. Susan's family is printing flyers. They're making purple ribbons. They're wearing them. They're giving them to anybody who's willing to wear them and have them and spread word about her disappearance. Her best friend plans a vigil. Everybody who knew Susan was just trying as hard they could to find her. Everybody except Josh. In fact, everything that he does from the moment she vanishes, from the moment he comes back home that day, everything he does just leads everybody to suspect him more and more. Eventually, he closed her bank account, he cashed out her retirement fund, and he left to stay with Steven in Washington. I mean, your wife is missing, you leave the house where you lived together, and you go to live in another state? What if she comes back? He knew she was not coming back. We're going to start to talk about Steven because I almost missed him. It's been a while. From that moment, Steven sort of made it his life mission to protect Josh. He was shielding him from the media, isolating him from harassment from the press, but also from the police. There was a book written about this case, and one of the authors of this book, she refers to Steven's house as Fort Powell. Nobody can get in. And because there's no way in, police will maybe need the help of someone who's already in the house in the fort. Jennifer offers to help. From the beginning, she does not believe her brother and she knows he killed Susan. The first thing she will do for police is that she will take the boys to a justice center. I don't know what that is, but she takes them there and they will be sort of interviewed by a detective.
What about when you went last night camping? When you were all done, what did you do?
We went to a beach when we was all done last night.
Charlie also told detectives that Mommy was in the trunk that day that they went camping. Of course, police will ask Josh about, why are your sons telling us that your wife was with you on that camping trip?
If they said that she was with us, they know that's not true.
Of course, he just denies it. I mean, they're kids. It's easy to say that they don't know what they're saying. I'm the adult. I know what I'm saying. The second thing Jennifer will do to help the investigation is she's actually going to have the brilliant idea to wear a wire and go to her dad's house, to Steven's house. So one evening she goes there. There's a family dinner. Pretty much everybody's there and she's wired up. I mean, that's how badly she wanted the truth. Jennifer actually reminded me of Boris a lot. Jennifer is like the Boris of the Powell family. She's the only sane one, the only one willing to actually do something to help. Boris is the brother of Ivan Milat. If you haven't seen that video, you should watch it. It was a very interesting case. During that dinner, Jennifer is super anxious because Susan has been missing for just a few days and nobody's talking about her. She's getting more and more anxious because she doesn't know how she's going to bring it up. She doesn't want Josh to be scared off, and if possible, she wants to get a confession out of him. She finally gets him aside and she asks him, what happened? Where is she? She asks him about that car he rented for 3 days shortly after Susan went missing. I think it was that same week. The car didn't have a GPS, so detectives could not find out where he had been. But from the rental car company, they got the information of how many miles he He did. He drove when he had the car for 3 days. Where did he go? Of course, she asks him about Sunday. Where did you go Sunday? Why would you take your boys? They're babies. Why would you take them camping on a night when there's a storm and it's the freaking winter? It's snowing. It's cold. And they didn't even have a tent. He says my attorney told me to not give any details. And she's like, I'm not anybody. I'm your sister. Tell me. And she finally says, just tell me where the body is. I want to know where the body is. He says, I didn't do anything wrong. Then he calls her a bitch and he tells her to leave. End of conversation, I guess. As the investigation progresses, police find more and more evidence. They find a letter that Susan wrote to Josh. Basically, a letter with, I don't remember how many pages, but it was a lot of pages. In this letter, she was begging him to try as hard as she was to save their marriage, to try and make it work. She was begging him to accept her and her faith. Basically, this letter was listing all the problems they had, and Susan was expressing how tired and frustrated she was that Josh wasn't willing to do anything to solve those problems. Police eventually got a warrant to seize Josh's car, and inside they found a garbage bag. It's a garbage bag. It has no business being in a car. It's supposed to be in a garbage bin. That's where a garbage bag goes. In a garbage bin. They also found an unidentified object, and Josh refused to tell them what it was. I think again he said that he didn't know or he didn't remember. That was his go-to answer when he didn't want to tell the truth. The police also seized his hard drives, his computer, and they tried to take his phone. I mean, they did because Josh accepted. He gave them his phone, but he took out the SIM card. I think they had their backs turned or they were maybe out of the room, but he took the SIM card out. And you have to remember that this is 2009, and at the time, phones stored the data inside the SIM card, not in the phone. I mean, not all phones, but most of them. So when Josh took the SIM card, he was basically obstructing justice. Isn't it obstructing justice? He should have been arrested for that. He obviously had something to hide, and trust me, it was not a mistress. He did not have a mistress. I mean, the investigation never found that he had a mistress, so that's not what he was trying to hide. He just did not want police to find out about his whereabouts. The police decided to call his cell phone provider. I think they got most of the information from the company anyway. They got confirmation that Josh was on the phone with Steven on Sunday. They also found out when the phone was off, at what times it was off, and when it was turned back on. And you remember earlier when I told you that his neighbor's son called him and left a voicemail the Monday that Susan vanished? So what happened was he turned on his phone and he saw that voicemail and he checked it, he heard it, he listened to it. And what he did right after that is he drove about 20 miles south, and that's when he called Susan on her phone and he left that voicemail that he left her. What police believes is that when he saw that voicemail and he did not recognize the number, he heard it, he listened to it, he had to check it. And that sort of interfered with his plan of, drive to where he needed to be when he made that phone call to Susan's phone. I think he was trying to build an alibi or something. I don't know. Maybe he was trying to show that he left a voicemail where he acted absolutely normal. He wasn't saying anything really. I mean, he wasn't saying much. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what he was thinking. That voicemail doesn't make any sense. His phone records show that he lied to police on his whereabouts from Sunday to Monday evening when he came back home. They got confirmation that he lied about the route he took on this camping trip. I started talking about Steven, then I trailed off. I have a tendency to do that, sorry. So let's get back to him because there's very, very interesting stuff to say. The Susan missing situation sort of allowed him to regain control of Josh. I'm pretty sure he's the one who made him move back to Washington State under the pretense of protecting him. When Josh finally gave an interview on TV, I guess he finally realized it just looked suspicious that he never spoke. So Josh gives this interview and he says very hilarious stuff.
I'm a good dad. I work hard. I put my sons first. I was a good husband. I took care of my family.
You still love her?
Yeah.
As Josh is answering the questions, you can hear Steven go, me, I have something to say. There's something I want to say. He will make two big revelations. The first one is that he believes Susan ran away with another man. I have a short chapter on this, so we'll get into it soon, but for now let's talk about the other revelation. The reporter asks him, what makes you say that she ran away with another man? And then he says,
Susan was very, very sexual with me. She was very flirtatious. I mean, I'm her father-in-law, and she would do a lot of things that I mean, she did it. I did. I mean, we interacted in a lot of sexual ways because Susan enjoys doing that.
Do you think a part of you started falling in love with Susan?
That's pretty likely, yeah. I mean, yeah, I would say so. And there's no question in my mind that the feelings were mutual.
He's on television and he's explaining how sexual his daughter-in-law was with him. He gives this example of when they were, I don't know, they were out, I don't remember where or what they were doing, and she had Braden in her arms and she gave him to Stephen, and while she did that, supposedly she brushed her breasts against him or one breast against his hand or whatever. I mean, it just sounded so gross. We know from part 1 of this video that Stephen is a perv. Now he's also a liar. During this interview, and it's actually great that Stephen and Josh gave this interview, he was stupid enough in this attempt to depict Susan as someone who just sleeps around and is very sexual with anybody, someone who loves to initiate sex with her father-in-law. He says, when I read her journals, and of course he says that because he wants to give credibility to what he's saying. Like, I'm not the one saying it, I read it in her journals. He's given away the fact that he's in possession of Susan's journals, a missing person, so the police now can get a warrant to search his house. Granted, it's not Josh's house back in Utah, but it's something. When police search his house, they seize, of course, Susan's journals, but also computers they find in the home, hard drives, notebooks that belong to Stephen, his beloved camera, and the mini tapes that he has. So you remember from part 1 that Stephen was filming Susan a lot, especially when she was living under his roof. And when police find the tapes, they also find other women other than Susan. Stephen has an entire collection of videos and pictures neatly cataloged into folders. Some are labeled neighbors. I mean, when you read the labels, it's super creepy. Open window, back house, taking bath. I think one of them said naked, something naked. Some of the girls in the videos and pictures are identified. Some of them are his neighbors. They were, at the time he took the pictures, 7 and 12 years old. He's a pedophile. You know what Alina has to say about this? Alina, remember, is the youngest daughter of Stephen and Terry. She says those girls chose to be seen. And she's talking about the neighbors. She's talking about those kids, right? Because they're not even teenagers. She says they knew the windows were open. They knew that people could see. So it's their fault. They wanted the attention. And she says the same thing about Susan. Susan wanted the attention of her father-in-law. She flirted with him. She was teasing him. She was just playing a game. She was just leading him on. How does she explain she moved to another state? In Susan's journals, police find that she wrote about the fact that she believed Stephen was a pedophile. I wondered how she knew about it. Maybe it's because from the moment she met him, she was barely 18 years old when she started dating Josh, and maybe she could feel that the way he was looking at her when she was barely 18, it was just wrong. It was probably other things though, but I couldn't find what. She just knew he was a pedophile and she wrote about it. In her writings, she also confirms that the reason she got away is because he's a creep and he's always looking at her. He's always filming her. I think sometimes she could sense that he was filming her. Sometimes she knew, yeah, that's true, but sometimes she didn't. There was a hole, I forgot to mention that in the French version of this video, but I think she's the one who wrote about it, or maybe she told a friend. She realized that I think it was in a bathroom somewhere in the house when she was living under Stephen's roof. There was a hole somewhere for someone to see you naked, basically either taking your bath or going to the bathroom. Weirdly enough, Stephen was never considered a person of interest in the disappearance of Susan, even after police found out that he's the one who was actually obsessed with her.
I just had what was probably the most erotic experience I've had in my entire life. Susan has been feeling ill. She had a cold. I offered to rub her feet, to rub her toes, to give her some stimulation. That went on. I probably rubbed her feet, her toes, her beautiful feet. She has such pretty feet. Of course, everything about her is pretty beautiful. I started massaging her legs. I would have loved to go all the way up her legs, but I did do her calves because her feet were resting in my crotch, so I sort of rubbed her calves. She didn't seem to mind at all having me that close. I mean, I was close. I was touching her with my crotch. Then I just started rubbing her back and her neck and her shoulders. I didn't want to push my luck. Josh was sitting across the room on the chair, and he wasn't always watching, so I sort of took liberties as he didn't watch. And I put my hands around the front, and I did feel her breasts, at least to some degree. I didn't put my hands, and I didn't cut my hands over them, but I felt the sides and a little bit on the underneath, and she had an underwire bra on. And I love that woman. She is so beautiful. Can't even get enough of her. Can't get enough of looking at her. She's so pretty.
Stephen wrote in his journal, "I feel like Josh did a truly stupid thing and probably disposed of her body in a grotesque way. I think he probably went to some former industrial land just west of West Valley City and cremated her. Josh's life with Susan was utterly miserable." Why did he use past tense? It was miserable? Like she's not coming back and you know? Evidently, this tragedy is my answer for why Josh hung on. He wanted to do it his way and avoid a messy and costly divorce. In 2012, Stephen was arrested for voyeurism and possession of child pornography. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Now, because this is child pornography we're talking about, and because Susan's kids were living under Stephen's roof, social services got involved and they took the kids away. Just a heads up, this chapter is very difficult to hear, so either skip it or brace yourself. I'm not going to show any images, but it is very difficult to hear. While the boys were in the custody of the state, Charlie and Braden were interviewed by police, and Charlie said, again, something very incriminating for Josh. He says we can't talk about mom or camping. It's obvious that he was coached by Josh or Stephen, or both, maybe both. He also says that he can only see his mommy when he goes camping. Susan's parents, Chuck and Judy Cox, they wanted to get custody of the boys. They were actually granted temporary custody of Charlie and Braden, and they were fighting with Josh to get full custody, permanent custody. Josh was able to see them under supervision in a third-party facility, and even though Stephen was in prison, Josh wanted to get his own house in the hope that it would maybe help his case into getting his sons back. If he doesn't live under Stephen the pedophile's roof, there's no reason for the boys to be taken away. The pedophile is gone, he's in prison. In this custody battle, evidence is brought from both parties against the other party. In Josh's house, in his new house, they found porn in the form of comics, cartoon characters doing the nasty. Again, Josh is like that, porn lying around. Something important is going to come up during the hearings for the custody. Josh is going to have to pass a polygraph test and a psychosexual evaluation. Now he's not going to be able to avoid answering questions about where is Susan. He probably thought getting a house was going to be enough to get his kids back, but obviously it wasn't, because you also have to be sane. On February the 5th, 2012, the boys had a visitation scheduled with their dad. A social worker showed up at Chuck and Judy's house. She picked them up, and then she drove them to Josh's house. Now that he had a new house, social services granted him the right, I guess, the permission to have the visitations at his home and not in a third-party facility anymore. So Charles and Braden are taken to Josh's house by the social worker. When she gets there, Josh opens the door, he lets the boys in, and then he slams the door in the social worker's face. She knocks and then she starts yelling, "Let me in, let me in." He doesn't want to open the door. It's a supervised visit, so she's supposed to supervise and be inside. She hears him say, "Charlie, I have a surprise for you." At that point, she smells gasoline and she decides to call 911.
I'm on a supervised visitation for a court-ordered visit, and something really weird has happened. The kids went into the house, and the parent, the biological parent, whose name is Cox Powell, will not let me in the door. I'm really shocked, and I could hear one of the kids crying.
All right, we'll have somebody look for you there.
Okay, how long will it be?
I don't know, ma'am. They have to respond to emergency, life-threatening situations first. The first available deputy
Well,
is responding.
this could be life-threatening. He went to court on Wednesday, and he
While the social worker was on the phone with 911, she started, getting to neighbors, talking to neighbors and asking them to help her because there's two boys inside and she doesn't know what's going to happen, what can happen, but there's nothing anybody can do and it's already too late.
It was a twisted murder-suicide. Two young boys killed at the hands of their father, Josh Powell, in a terrifying end to a long and sordid nightmare.
Well, the worst part is the medical examiner confirmed the cause of death was carbon monoxide poisoning. That morning, Josh had purchased a gallon of gas. When he came back to his house and when the boys got there, he actually used a hatchet to try and kill them. They were still alive. And it was the explosion that killed them. It was the carbon monoxide. The examiner found chop wounds on them. I think they also found the hatchet. But yeah, he tried killing them like that before the explosion. They were still alive when he poured gasoline on them. He laid them on the floor. I think it was in the living room next to each other. And then he used a match and he provoked the explosion. The murder-suicide was premeditated. The weekend prior to the visit, Josh took all of Charlie and Braden's toys and he gave them to charity. That same day, he sent voice messages and text messages. He sent one voice message to Alina and he said, "I'm not able to live without my sons. I'm not able to go on anymore. I'm sorry to everyone I've hurt. Goodbye." When I found out that Josh killed his sons because of how the custody battle was progressing, the way it was going, obviously very badly for him, I just thought that even if he had custody or shared custody with Chuck and Judy, maybe he did not want his kids to grow up and maybe remember things or maybe talk to a shrink and maybe realize that their dad killed their mother. I also thought about how Josh felt like he never really had control of his life. Steven was very controlling. Everything that he did, everything that he tried to do, he never really had control over. He started two businesses that failed. He had an amazing wife that was slipping through his fingers because he was such an ass. And now his boys were also gonna be taken away from him. I feel like maybe in a desperate attempt to get control, to have control of his wife, he killed her because he did not want her to leave. And then he killed his sons because, again, he wanted to control them. I even wondered if that day that they all went camping, if maybe he did not want to kill the boys that day with Susan, and maybe at the time he didn't have the heart to do it. I don't know. Chuck and Judy Cox filed a lawsuit against the state for the wrongful death of Charlie and Braden. They believe that the state should not have accepted to have visits at Josh's home. The issue wasn't just Stephen Powell's home and Stephen Powell being in possession of child pornography. Josh also had porn content, and it was cartoons. I mean, how easy would it be for a kid to find it and think it's just a cartoon? The problem was obviously the psychosexual evaluation and the polygraph. Chuck and Judy had every reason to fight for custody of Charlie and Braden. The trial took place last year. The Cox family won. The court found the state of Washington negligent. Chuck and Judy Cox were given $32 million, $16 for each child in punitive damages. Introducing Michael Powell. Michael is the fourth child of Stephen and Terry Powell. You know his family's past from part 1, so I'm just going to say a few more words about him. Michael served in the Army for 4 years. He got a bachelor's degree at the University of Washington in Asian Studies with focus on Korean. He was fluent in Korean, which I am jealous of. After he got his bachelor's degree, he moved to Minnesota. He got a doctorate in cognitive science. He even served as Democratic Convention delegate for Barack Obama. Sorry, I had to read that. Now let's get into how he is involved in the disappearance of Susan. The first thing that happened that I found weird was that he was living in Minnesota, and when Susan vanished, he went to Utah only a few days after she went missing. You might think that it's because he wanted to support his family. Maybe. Michael's phone was off the day before Sunday, and on Monday, most of Monday, it was also off. He turned it back on to check a voicemail that he received sometime on Monday when Stephen was on his way back from the camping trip. Coincidence? Much later in the investigation, I think it was around August, September 2011, so almost 2 years after Susan went missing, police found out that Michael had a car and it broke down 2 weeks after Susan vanished. He had it towed, and police seized it. So in 2011, they seized it for analysis. They discovered, with the help of cadaver dogs, that there were human remains in the trunk and in the back seat. So the first question that you'd think of is, did he help Josh get rid of Susan's body? The DNA analysis was inconclusive. Turns out it was not Susan's DNA. When I was filming my French video, I actually sort of had an epiphany, and I was like, oh my god, I think I have a theory on whose DNA it is. I could be wrong. I have to talk about it in the next chapter because right now it's not going to make any sense. Obviously, Michael was interviewed by police, and just like his brother, he wasn't really answering any questions. He lied about where the car broke down. He even tried to give false information about the car itself at first because he did not realize that the police already had it. They knew about it. When police asked him if he knew anything about Susan, would he tell them? And he said, absolutely not. I mean, again, this sounds to me like obstruction of justice, isn't it? I looked it up online. I looked up obstruction of justice, and I don't know, it just sounds like it. Michael defended both his brother and father. About Stephen, he said that the child pornography that they found in his home, it was actually not his. It was planted there by police. They were just framing him. All the evidence against Stephen, according to Michael, was fabricated. His answer to why he thinks police did that is because they wanted to destroy his family's reputation. Because police have so much time on their hands. That's what they do, you know. They go around in people's houses and they plant evidence to destroy reputations. Makes sense. You remember that Josh had gotten life insurance on Susan and on the boys and on himself? The insurance company filed a court action to have a judge decide if the policy was still valid and if Michael could get the money, because you see, 4 months before Josh committed suicide and killed his boys, he changed the beneficiary of the policy. It used to be Susan. He changed it to Michael. So Michael was trying to get the money, maybe not for Susan's policy, but at least for his brother and the boys as well. The fact that Josh changed the beneficiary 4 months before he committed suicide and killed his sons, I mean, I just wondered if he knew he was going to do that. Michael never got the money. He committed suicide in 2013. He jumped off a building. Nobody knows why he killed himself. He didn't leave a note. He didn't call anyone. He didn't text anyone. He didn't warn anyone. Did he kill himself out of guilt? Did he help get rid of Susan's body? Did he help maybe kill her? One last thing about Michael, and this will be the perfect transition for the next chapter. Michael, as I said, defended Stephen and also Josh. And there's one thing he said that probably he heard Stephen say before him. It was just like Josh. When Josh was on TV and he was interviewed, he said the exact same thing about his wife that Stephen had just said. Susan was very sexual. Like word for word, he said the exact same thing. And Michael again repeated what Stephen said about Susan, that she ran away with another man. She's still alive, she just left. Who is Stephen Koecher? I actually hate calling people by their family names, but his name is Stephen, so just so we don't confuse him with Stephen Powell, I'm going to call him Koecher. Koecher is a man from West Valley, like Josh and Susan. They lived in the same city. Koecher is also a member of the LDS Church, like Susan. He's a very devout Mormon. He went missing on December 2009. He went missing on the 13th, so remember Susan went missing on the 7th. The Powell family had a website. I tried to find it. I didn't. So they have this website where they started claiming that Susan ran away. It was probably Stephen who was behind it, but they started claiming that Susan ran away with Stephen Koecher. Why Stephen Koecher? Because they went missing the same week. Also, they're the same age pretty much. They're both Mormons and they just ran away to Brazil where they wanted to start a new life. You see, this is exactly why Susan left behind a note where she talked about how she would never leave Braden and Charlie. She knew the Powell family, and I think she knew them enough to know that they would be capable of coming up with something crazy like that. The families of Susan and Koecher, they both deny these allegations. There's absolutely nothing that proves that they knew each other. Koecher's mother said that as much as she appreciates any attention that is given to her son's case, there's no truth to it. And Koecher actually left his passport behind, so he probably didn't leave the country. On that same website, the Powell family started claiming that Judy Cox, Susan's mother, had undiagnosed mental health issues because the Powell family, you see, they are doctors and they can diagnose people. And they did the same thing with Susan. Susan apparently inherited her mother's mental health issues. And according to them, the night she went missing, what happened was Josh told Susan that she was like her mother, like the one thing that she did not want to hear, and that's what made her leave. Stephen told police how to do their jobs because, he's not just a doctor, he's also a detective. So he told police, you should check marriage records, wedding records in Brazil, and I'm sure you're going to find Susan's name. Even if you don't find it, I'm telling you, she just left my son because sometimes he's weird. Stephen Powell passed away in 2018, 1 year after his release from prison. So you remember in 2012, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. 1 year after he came out, he died of a heart attack. Everybody in the family who probably knew what happened to Susan, Josh, Michael, and Stephen, they're all dead now. And I'm pretty sure they knew, especially Josh. He had so much control over his son. There is no way he didn't know. He wrote it in his journals. He wrote it like he wasn't sure, but I think he knew. I think he just lied in his journals, but I think he knew. And Michael, why would he commit suicide? There was nothing in his life other than Susan missing. There was nothing tragic, nothing big that happened in his life that would make him want to commit suicide. I don't think his childhood was that crazy that he would want to kill himself. He was in Minnesota. He had a pretty good life. Josh probably knew that Susan was gonna leave, not because she talked about divorce. He knew he was not gonna make any efforts. He did not want to make any efforts. He couldn't have her, so he killed her. And same with the boys. I also thought about Josh's parents' divorce, the ugly divorce, and the fight for custody of the kids, and how he wanted to stay with his mother, but he did not want the rules, and then he stayed with his dad. That probably stayed with him, and he did not want to go through that himself with his wife. Maybe he did not want his kids to go through a divorce as well. And you remember in part 1 when I was talking about Stephen and Terry, even after the divorce, the way they would fight and the way that Stephen was just being petty with Terry just because. I feel like Stephen would probably have done the same thing. He probably would have fought Susan to get custody of the kids, not because he would have wanted to have them, because he wasn't taking care of them when he had them, just because he did not want to let her win. Susan was the breadwinner of the family. That probably played a part in the fact that he did not want her to leave. He was with someone he could be lazy with. I'm pretty sure that he killed himself because of the psychosexual evaluation that he was going to go through and the polygraph test that he knew he was going to fail. It's a polygraph, for custody of the kids. But if they ask you questions about a missing person's case, and if you fail it, does it give police the right to arrest you? I mean, would he have been arrested for failing the polygraph test and lying to the question, where is Susan? Did you kill her? Did you kill your wife? I feel the saddest for Charlie and Braden because their deaths could have been avoided. And Susan's as well. I mean, I'm pretty sure she's dead. There's no way she's in Brazil. Let's end on a positive note. I do have a random item review for tonight. I guess I need to keep my sanity and I need to talk about something positive at the end of every video. I have the need to talk about something positive before I go to bed. Tonight's random item review is green because we are green on That True Crime channel. Tonight's random item is an eco-friendly makeup remover. I bought it on Amazon and it's actually not that pricey. This one from Amazon was a set of 4 and it was only €8, so I'm guessing that's like $12. It's probably like £6 for the UK. You just need water, you don't need any products. The first time I used it, I was actually amazed because I was like, how can you remove your makeup if you're not using any products? This is super smooth. I don't know if you can see how smooth it is. It's super smooth. It feels like the blankets or comforters that you use when it's the winter. You gently rub your skin and the makeup will be gone. I wash mine with soap and it doesn't even make it, drier or anything. It stays exactly the same. Once I'm done, I usually let it dry on the sink and it's good to use the next day. And as usual, I will leave a link in the description box. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, make a suggestion for the upcoming weeks. And as usual, I will see you next week. Bye.